Good evening, and welcome to this forum for the City of Clawson election. Today is September 28th, 2017. This forum will be featuring the candidates who have filed for City Commissioner. There are 5 candidates for 2 4-year term commissioner seats. Vote for 2. Sponsor of this forum is the League of Women Voters, Oakland area. I am Jerry Burton, a member of the League of Women Voters. I am not a resident of the City of Clawson. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, national, nonpartisan political organization. Our members do the hands-on work to safeguard democracy. While we never endorse a candidate or political party, we are directly involved in shaping the important issues that keep our community strong. As a League of Women Voters member, I have the opportunity to contribute in a leadership manner such as this, and have great impact on local, state, and national issues. If you would like to make a similar impact, I would encourage you to pick up any literature on the League of Women Voters available here tonight, or visit our website, LWVOA.org. The League of Women Voters did not endorse any candidate or political party. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, and the sponsors take no responsibility. The format for this forum has been set by the League of Women Voters. We ask that the audience remain silent during the forum. Please turn off all cell phones and electronic devices. The only photography permitted is by the media. We ask the candidates answer the questions in their own views only and not interrupt another candidate. The candidates will have equal time in answering questions submitted by the audience and screened at duplication and relevancy by Jerry Rensler, a member of the League of Women Voters. If you need a card to write a question, there's cards and pencils on the back counter. Help yourself and bring them up to the screener, and we will handle the questions there. The format is as follows. All candidates will be given 1 minute for opening statements in alphabetical order, beginning with City Commission candidates. Closing statements will be in reverse order with 1 minute. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question in rotating order unless time is extended by the moderator. All candidates will be allowed equal time to answer the questions. Our timer is Judy Bateman, and she will indicate when there's 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and when to stop. For the 2 4-year term seats, we have Matthew Ball, Kyle Bird, Jim Horton, Paula Milan, and Susan Moffett. Also on the ballot, but running unopposed for mayor, is Deborah Woolley. And also on the ballot is a sidewalk improvement bond issue, which I will read verbatim after the candidates have finished their opening statements. We begin our opening statements with Mr. Ball.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Ball. I'm the attorney-turned-musician that became a YouTube hit with 4 million views. I'm 46 years old. I've been in Clawson for the last 14 years with my wife. We have a young son in Clawson Public Schools. And I'm running for City Council to make a difference because in the last 10 years, I've seen our neighbors like Ferndale, Berkeley, and Royal Oak enjoy tremendous property value growth and prosperity, and I'd like Clawson to see some of the same. To do it, I think we need an infusion of recreational and cultural events, happenings, and amenities that elevate the brand identity of Clawson, that make it a destination attraction to growing families, and that generate the kind of word-of-mouth review that spurs property growth and increased revenues to the city. We are a great city, but we can be even better.
Thank you. Mr. Bird.
Hello, my name is Kyle Bird. I'm a local attorney. I've lived in Clawson for about 2 years now. I actually grew up in Grosse Pointe Woods, and I went to school out of state in Washington, D.C., and I attended law school in San Diego. When I moved back, I was looking for a place to settle down and, eventually start a family and, spend the next several decades of my life. And I was drawn to Clawson because of its unique, walkable downtown, its thriving community, and everybody here has just been so amazing. I ran for city council, and I'm running for city council because I want to make a difference in the city and do whatever I can to help the city grow going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Horton.
Hi, my name's Jim Horton. I'm the lone incumbent here, sitting up here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a 31-year resident. I've been on the fire department for 28 and a half years. I retired 5 years ago. As being in the fire department, you're also a member of the Goodfellows, and what we are is a nonprofit organization that provides food and toys to children during the holidays and actually out throughout the year. Again, I've served in the council the last 4 years. I'm proud of what we've accomplished up here. We've not always all agreed. Property values in Clawson has led the county for the past 2 years. I'm proud of that. Last year we were #1 in the county. So I think it's based on what we've done to fight blight and some of the other decisions that we've made here. Decisions are actually not always what certain people like, but it's really what's best for the city. I will continue to fight for the city, and I'm a firm believer in keeping our city services here in town and intact, and I thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Milan.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to be here this evening to share a little bit about who I am and why I would make a good candidate for you for your city council. I'm a wife and a mother. Those are my most important roles to me. I'm a full-time worker. I've worked for 23 years for an engineering firm. I have an education with a bachelor's degree in political science, a master's degree in public administration. And back when I started out, my whole goal was to be a city manager. And then working for a city for 5 years in a mayor's office, I just wound up in a different place. I wound up for an engineering firm, and that's great. But we moved to Clawson 5 years ago. We came here as a school of choice family. We thought it would be a really temporary thing to come to Clawson, get our kids in school for a year, and then find someplace we really loved. We met people we loved here, which is why we're here today. We met Penny and Debbie pretty much in the beginning. Clawson is full of people like Penny and Debbie, and that's why I want to run for city council. I want to be part of the family and the fabric that makes Clawson unique and great. I want to keep our city services. I love that our police department is infused with the community and that the community is infused with each other, and I'd just like to be a part of that.
Thank you. Ms. Moffett.
I'd like to start by thanking the city and the League of Women Voters for hosting and organizing this event. And I'd also like to thank all of you who came out today. My name is Susan Moffett, and 26 years ago, I purchased a home on Dreon and started a family. I am here today to ask for your vote for City Council. I have work experience in executive leadership positions, project management, and strategic planning, and I've earned a bachelor's degree from Wayne State University. Over the past 6 months, I have spent my time diving into the city ordinances, council minutes, and the master plan for this great city. The three most important issues facing the city are the fact that the city budget is still recovering from the financial crisis of 2009, infrastructure issues like refurbishing our streets, and addressing transparency issues to ensure information reaches actively engaged and non-actively engaged citizens. Clawson is a great place to own a home, raise a family, and start or grow a business. I'm here today because I want to help keep Clawson awesome.
Thank you. Now I will read the ballot issue that's also on the ballot. This will be verbatim. Sidewalk improvement bond proposal. Shall the city of Clawson borrow the sum not to exceed $2,125,000 and issue its general obligation unlimited tax bonds in one or more series payable not to exceed 10 years from the date of issuance for the purpose of paying the cost to acquire, construct, and improve sidewalks in the city, including all related apertures. The estimated millage to be levied in 2018 is .28 mils. That's 28 cents per $1,000 of taxable value. And the estimated simple average annual millage rate required to retire the bonds is .58 mils, 58 cents per 1,000 of taxable value. That would be a yes or no vote. Now is the time for the questions, and we will start our first question with Mr. Ball. How would you engage residents and visitors in Clawson?
I think what I want to be a spearhead for is the revitalization or the improved quality of events, happenings, and recreational facilities. I think we need to be strategic and understand why people move into a city. It's not because of pretty sidewalks or pretty streets. It's because of a vibrant downtown filled with cultural events. It's because of recreational spaces that are there to educate, entertain, inspire. And I think Clawson needs to engage in a higher quantity and quality of all of those things.
Thank you. Mr. Byrd.
Could you repeat the question, please?
How would you engage residents and visitors to Clawson?
Well, I think right now Clawson actually has a lot of great events that goes on. Obviously, more could happen. The CraftCom that recently was this past summer, a lot of my friends went to, and we all had a lot of really good time. But more importantly, I think that just moving forward and expanding the farmers market, I think would be a great idea. A lot of the local cities have farmers markets, and I think that, you know, Clawson has such an amazing city park. We could be doing so much more, especially with having, you know, food trucks. I think that would be a great thing to do.
Thank you. Mr. Horton.
Thank you, Jerry. I think the city does have a lot of really nice events in this city, and they've become more and more as we've gotten more people to volunteer in the city. Events such as these, the car show, the CraftCom, farmers market, cinema in the street, they all take engaged volunteers, and Clawson's always been a really close-knit community with really good people to volunteer. So we can have more and more events where we can draw more people and get people out. If we can get more people to come out and help, and I guess that's a call to get people to come and help at some of these events. We have a lot of cultural events, and certainly the park is a place where we could do other things. We've tried to do a lot downtown to try to draw people to the downtown area to show them what we have to offer, and that's been the big draw there, and a lot of that's been done by the DDA and even some of the local businesses who formed together. So I would call on the residents to get together and help volunteer, and we can do a lot more. We can do a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Milan.
I think the city does a great job of offering a variety of activities for all age groups and for varying interests. I don't think it's the city's responsibility necessarily to entertain our residents, although it is nice to have something for people to come and attend and to bring your family and friends. But the things like the trick-or-treat trail or the farmer's market, which I go to church on Sunday, not the best hours, I'm just going to say. Maybe if you can make them a little bit early, maybe another day, I don't know. But you're not going to satisfy everyone. But I think engaging the entities that are here now, the school district, the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, the various things that happen in the high school, engaging people through the facilities that are already here to help support, because I know volunteerism is really at a low, and you have the same 10 faces probably showing up all the time and doing the same exact things. But I guess just supporting what we have here today and engaging the people that are here already, just to help it build and make a broader base.
Thank you. Ms. Moffett.
So I think that there's a couple of things that we can do to engage and reach citizens and visitors, primarily through the website, which has improved a lot over the past couple of years, but there's definitely room for improvement, making it easier to find information that they're looking for, how to resolve issues, and how to find out about the different events. Increasing our presence on social media, which we've definitely increased over the past couple of months, but to do more of that. And then publicizing and really working some of the events that we do have. You know, the 4th of July event is one of our hallmark events, and everyone equates that with Clawson. So making sure that we make the best impression at that event, and then making sure that we publicize all the other great events that we have, like the one this Sunday at the park for the Fall Festival.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Byrd. How would you define and tackle the infrastructure issues in the city of Clawson?
Well, my understanding, one of the main issues is the sidewalk, which will be on the ballot this coming fall, and I definitely would support voting for it. I think that it would allow the city's sidewalks to get completed in 5 years, and my understanding would have been maybe decades before it would have been completed otherwise, so I definitely would support that. Another major thing I think is the issues of trees. I know that tree removal is very expensive, but if it could be done in a logical fashion, maybe the worst ones, and also to plant trees that wouldn't, have a lot of debris that would get on people's homes and cars and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horton.
Well, as you know, infrastructure has never been a real glamorous subject. People like to see shiny things, improvements in the park, and we all like to see those too. But we can see even from Flint and some of the surrounding communities that if we ignore our infrastructure and our roads and even our sidewalks to some extent, it's actually going to decay to the point where it's going to affect our property values. And I think attention to these type things is what has kept Clawson near the top as far as improvement in home values. We always dedicate a lot of money, and I know that the mayor who is not running and myself have always at least agreed on a few things, and one of them has been infrastructure as far as road repair. I really think that's important. The sidewalks is up for debate, although I really think we need to get it done. It'd be nice to get it done in 5 years, and the money that was allocated towards it many years ago just isn't going as far as it used to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Milan.
Infrastructure is probably one of the most important things we can address. I know serving on planning, there are many little infrastructure issues that came about for just regular business owners. But as a city, it's imperative that we plan in advance and that we provide the appropriate funding. But sometimes there's just not enough money in the budget to do the things that need to take place. And sometimes things take place in an emergency fashion that you weren't planning on. But I think the city's done a good job in thinking ahead. The sidewalk issue is a really good example of that. But there are other ways you can finance, and maybe if we employed a good grant writer, we could find funds that were available through other sources. It could help tackle some of the immediate needs that we have or some of the future needs, and just think outside of the box perhaps for ways to just come up with it. But you can't ignore it. I think it's something that has to be on the horizon all of the time.
Thank you, Ms. Moffett.
Infrastructure is one of the primary responsibilities, I think, of the city. It's taking care of the house, if you will, that we all live in. Unfortunately, our ability to make major infrastructure changes is stymied by the fact that our budget is still suffering from the financial crisis of 2009. So we have limited funds, and in reviewing the budget, there's just not extra money to put towards the necessary things like street repairs and taking care of the trees. In reading the mayor's State of the City address from this March, she talked about how one of the goals of the city council was to establish a infrastructure fund and budget and plans for that. And I think that's one of the things that really needs to be addressed. We need a strategic plan of how we're going to address some of these things. The sidewalks is one step. Employing grant writers or getting some other funds or other ways to take care of resources and funds to take care of some of those important items is another.
Thank you. Mr. Ball.
The way you have plenty of money for infrastructure is to have a strategy to grow property value, which is the primary source of income to the city. And that gets at why people move into a community. We have to have things that we do here that brand ourselves uniquely from other cities, that make us a destination attraction, and that are done not just by volunteers, but by professionals, so they deliver the kind of experience that people walk away from and say, that was awesome, what a cool place to live. And they're going to buy their house next in a community like ours because of it. So I think what's missing, and what has been missing, is an understanding of which comes first, the events, cultural happenings, and great recreational spaces, or the infrastructure. It's the events, recreational spaces, and culture that pay for the infrastructure.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Horton. Clawson wants to maintain our residential character. In order to do so, do we need more code enforcement?
Code enforcement to me goes hand in hand with blight and everything else. I've always been, and I think anybody out there who sees this knows that I've visited most of the places that have been on the residential blight list and have spoken to residents. Sometimes they've come out to see me there when I was just kind of coming by to take a look. Code enforcement is certainly not a lot of people's friends, especially when they think they're being picked on because their bushes might be too long. But code enforcement officers don't come out to homes unless someone generally calls. I hate to see someone come out and get picked on because they got paint chips, but generally when you see disrepair in a home, it does affect our property values. And fighting blight and making sure that the homes are kept up and that everybody's being good neighbors is important. So again, it's like infrastructure. It's not a glamorous item, but it's important.
Thank you, Ms. Milan.
I agree with everything you just said, but I believe that code enforcement is important not only in the residential sector, but it's critical in the business sector as well. We have to ensure that people aren't painting their buildings this lime green that nobody wants to look at, and that they replace their awnings when it's time, because all of those things affect us. And I will say that when I was getting signatures to run, several people that I spoke with, their concerns were simple things that you just take for granted, like my neighbor's garbage cans are out too early, too long, and too often. I don't like looking at so-and-so's car parked in the middle of the green space between the sidewalk and the street. I mean, things that are just really neighborly things, we do need to keep up on those, but we have to ensure that we have a city staff that can support the needs that we have and that they're available at the appropriate time so that items can be addressed in a quick and responsive manner.
Thank you, Ms. Moffett.
Code enforcement is also, it's as important as any other laws or regulations or ordinances that we have, and the only reason that you have them on the books or you have them in place is to make sure that they do their job. People going through and making sure that you're living up to those regulations is the only way that they're going to work and have any value. It seems like it's a really tough thing, though. You talk about people complaining about their neighbors, so it's a thin line between, keeping us all friendly and taking care of the voters and enforcing those things that might be uncomfortable to say. So there are definitely things that need to be addressed. It's an important part of the city.
Thank you. Mr. Ball.
I think code enforcement is necessary, but I also see it as a tool. I would like to see our codes be used as a device for shaping a downtown community that is perhaps unique from other downtowns. For instance, I would like maybe us to explore the idea of what can we do to incentivize landlords to fill their spaces. I don't like a downtown that's filled with empty vacancies for a lengthy period of time. So to me, code enforcement is a necessary evil, perhaps, for some people, but I think it can also be an opportunity and a tool for shaping the design of our community in a positive way.
Thank you. Mr. Byrd.
Well, I absolutely believe that code enforcement is important, especially to maintain the residential character of a city. Growing up in Grosse Pointe Woods, they were huge on this, to be an understatement. And I definitely recall my parents griping about it from time to time, but it's very important for the character of the city, especially residential. And for property value, I mean, it really ties together a city when you have, everybody obeying the same laws, and I would definitely support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Oh, I got it. Okay. Next question, we will start with Ms. Milan. There's a public hearing to discuss food trucks on October 3rd. What direction do you think the council should take on this issue?
I think the city council should listen to what the people who come to the public hearing have to say. But I think that food trucks are so popular right now. I think we're kind of making a little bit of a headway over nothing, really, when we're talking about them. I mean, I don't understand what the real issue is. I wouldn't want to infringe upon anyone's business. However, food trucks aren't going to be set up for long periods of time. I think designating a specific area for them might not be a bad thing. I think definitely in the park they should be welcomed, and I think it should be on a case-by-case basis, but as long as they're following all the health code requirements, I don't really see why it would be such a huge issue. That's just me.
Thank you, Ms. Moffett.
So Food trucks came up at the last city council meeting, and I was actually kind of shocked that there was opposition to it. So I started to do some research, and I had the opportunity to talk to Mark Lotus from Black Lotus and Joan Horton from the Downtown Development Authority to get some perspective on why there's opposition to the food trucks. And I get that the local business owners who feel that they pay taxes and they've put a lot of money into their businesses think that they're a threat. So I think that we need to be careful in crafting the ordinance. You know, they are very popular, and it is something that we need to have in place to keep up with some of the other communities. People want them. They're in demand. So maybe if we craft the ordinance such that we restrict the areas that they can be in, perhaps at the park. You know, I think it would be great for when I drop my kids off at a soccer practice. Well, I don't have kids anymore, but they're grown. Anyhow, when I drop my kids off at the soccer practice, be able to grab a meal from a food truck, or before the football game to have something other than a handful of Airheads and a Coke to eat, you know?
Thank you. Mr. Ball.
I think the role of a food truck is to be a symbiotic component to a cultural event or a festival. Outside that, I don't see the need for food trucks competing with our downtown businesses. I would love to see, instead of food trucks, maybe some of our own downtown businesses fulfill that symbiotic role to a cultural event or a festival. But food trucks for food trucks' sake, I'm not a proponent of.
Thank you. Mr. Byrd.
Well, I'm absolutely in favor of allowing food trucks in the city. I think they are a very good support to the different events we have in the city currently, and I know that they are allowed on a case-by-case basis, but I definitely believe they should be allowed, especially at the city park. I know a lot of people there, you know, they'll eat their lunch, but like obviously if the food truck's right there, why not allow somebody to, you know, get their lunch there? And in terms of taking business away from the brick and mortar stores, like I understand that's obviously a huge concern, and people, you know, they invest their time and their energy and their money and their capital into building a restaurant. But for the most part, and I would say very rarely, I mean, if somebody's going to go to a food truck as opposed to a restaurant, they're two different markets. If you're looking to get something quick, then that's obviously what a food truck would entail. But if you're going to sit down, you know, and have a good time and be with your friends, that'd be going to a restaurant. So I understand the concern, but I think that it's unfounded, and I would definitely support the food trucks.
Thank you. Mr. Horton.
At the last council meeting, I did speak out against food trucks, but I'd like to quantify my remarks. I guess I was somehow thinking, and I've been to Chicago, LA, and they're huge there. There's food trucks on every corner. And it's a large part of how the downtown areas there can get quality food at a reasonable price and real close where they can run out, because there aren't that many restaurants in those areas. So I don't really think that by allowing food trucks, we're going to have 6 or 7 of them downtown every day, because I don't think they'd be supported. I think at events, when we had CraftCom here, there were several here in the back parking lot, and maybe some of these businesses can use them to see whether or not a certain type of food, whether it be something other than Mediterranean or stuff, would come here. So, but for all intents and purposes, to have them here downtown on a daily basis, except for an event or maybe in the park, I really don't want to see them downtown. The brick and mortar people have invested too much money and time, and I don't think we should really take that away from them.
Thank you. Next question will start with Ms. Moffitt. What do you think an economic development coordinator should do?
An economic development coordinator. Well, it's interesting. I would like to see a job description associated with that. I think that, you know, if I were creating a job description for that role, one of the things that we really could use that Paula spoke to was a grant writer. You know, even though housing prices are increasing, the Headley Act limits the benefit that we can get from the housing increases. It limits the amount of taxes that we can, the amount that we can raise taxes. So housing prices can increase, you know, exponentially, but we only get to inch up the money that comes back to the city on very, very small increments because of the act, which is why it's going to take about 10 years for us to get back to the pre-financial crisis level for our budget. So someone who could help us write write grants or look for other ways to bring revenue to the city that's going to take, aside from taxes, is what I would envision that role to be.
Thank you, Mr. Ball.
Here's what they should do. They should either on the recreational or cultural front, or both of them, be doing that which creates a unique brand for our community, that which makes us a destination attraction, that which causes people to have a great word-of-mouth review, and therefore spurs property value growth and ultimately revenue streams into the city. That's what I would task a person under that title to do.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd.
Well, I believe a economic development coordinator should definitely focus on the commercial side of the city. We do have several empty buildings that are looking to be leased, and we do have several empty lots that could be built on. So I definitely feel like with the space we have available, that would be a good task for that position to fill.
Mr. Horton.
Economic Development Coordinator is just that. It's someone who should advertise vacant properties in the downtown and try to bridge the gap between the owners and or landlords and those who might be interested in those properties and try to get them together. That's what they should do. And they should keep a firm list of all of the vacant properties and have an idea of how much they want and get them to actually follow through on it. Now, I know that they really can't be, they're not the decision makers, and it's difficult for them, and it changes. We see the lists each week. The list may change by 25 or 30% each week of what's available, what's not available, who's in talks with someone. But they're really to advertise the city and bring people in. That was, I believe, was the what the position was created for.
Thank you, Ms. Milan.
The economic coordinator should serve as the liaison between any interested new parties interested in coming to Clawson and the city staff, building and safety, engineering. They should basically take someone who's interested in a property, show it off. They should have some kind of a packet that tells how great Clawson is, what our great amenities are. They should have an idea of what our plan is for the future, how they can fit their business in with what Clawson is, who Clawson is, and what we want to accomplish. They should also not just stop once the interested party perhaps makes an agreement with an owner. They should convey to that person what their responsibilities would be as a business, what their responsibilities would be to, once they got into this new property, if they have to replace trees, if they have to fix their sidewalk or their parking lot, just so that they have a keen grasp on what is required of them. But they should also work outside of the immediate city. They shouldn't wait for people to come to them. They should be active in many of the organizations that are out there for local communities so that we can actually promote Clawson aggressively.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Ball. Do you see anywhere we can share services, and do we outsource some services now? And they list dispatch, garbage, and ambulance.
Okay, well, this is the kind of decision that I would probably consult with the experienced professionals in those particular industries. But this question, to me, again, addresses the budgetary and the money issue. My feeling is that if you have a successful strategy for property value growth, you will have all of the financial needs to take care of your infrastructure. And I think the best case scenario would to have our own city services under our own city council's control or another arm of the city. I would like us to be an independent community. I don't originally like the idea of sharing services, although I can see sometimes how it might be necessary to save costs.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd.
Well, I think that the issue of outsourcing services is a very important one to the city. Obviously, we want to be a strong and independent Clawson, but at the same time, I know the city has not had a balanced budget, and I think that this would be a very good area to work with the city manager to look at saving costs and moving forward.
Mr. Horton.
The city has looked at, well, ever since the economic downturn of 9, 10 years ago, rather than claim bankruptcy, and which a lot of other cities did and looked for state help, the city pared down its budget, and we began sharing services with the city of Troy. We shared dispatch services for both fire department and police. We utilize their jail, and we pay them less than what it would cost us to maintain jail services. Our library is part of a library network that shares services with neighboring libraries so that others can get books that may not be available here, even though quite a few people come to our library because it's quaint and it's really well kept and very well maintained by a wonderful staff there. We do outsource some services. DPW does outsource some things, underground services that they can't do, don't have the materials and or manpower, and even doing stumps, tree stumps, that kind of thing is not economic for the city to keep a stumper and burn it up. So there's a lot of things we do to keep the cost down.
Thank you. Ms. Milan.
I love speaking after Mr. Horton because he just knows everything and I can spread it out so nicely. So I agree with all of those things, but I would have a caveat there that says there are certain things I would not even consider outsourcing. I think police is number one. Part of the reason is our policemen are part of our community. Yeah, I have a teenager. My son and all of his pack of friends know every single police officer out there, and they don't think of them as like the man. They think of them as this one's cool, this one you kind of watch out for, but they know them, they like them, they know they're active in in the community, they see them at their football games, at their baseball games, they will stop and talk to them if they're doing something stupid like throwing a ball and a neighbor on the street out here doesn't like, they'll tell them to stop nicely and not get annoyed. But I think that's part of the whole personality of Clawson, and I think maintaining that type of service, police for sure, would not make sense. There are other things, the things that he mentioned totally make sense. Like if you can do something a little bit cheaper and it's not taking away from one of the most important things you have, which is your people and communication and accountability, absolutely. But those things we maintain above all else.
Thank you. Ms. Moffett.
So Clawson's 2.2 square miles, right? 5,400 homes, 11,000 some residents. We're small. So I think that historically we've been very prudent in partnering with Troy to take care of some of the services like Jim mentioned, but keeping some of the key things inside so that we can help build the community and help have some sort of role in managing those services like the police. So I think that we've been prudent in the past. I don't think there's any new discussions about outsourcing any services that I'm aware of, but the past decisions that we've made are very prudent and wise, and we should continue on that path.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Byrd. Would you support additional pedestrian crossings on Main Street?
I think currently we have enough. I mean, there's one north, south, east, and west, and I think they're pretty fairly spaced. I know I walk to downtown all the time, especially on Main Street. I've never had an issue of getting to the different crosswalks. So I think currently, I mean, based on traffic flow, I think they're fine as they are.
Mr. Horton.
Currently, we don't have one on Main Street. I don't believe we need one on Main Street. In fact, I fought to get a pedestrian crosswalk at the senior high-rise because they keep walking across 14 Mile Road to go over to the party store or whatever to get milk. And we were really worried for them. So we went for a grant to try to get a crosswalk. Mm-hmm. And darned if the state didn't come out and say, okay, well, you've got to do a traffic study, and determined that we needed 3 of them. So we weren't going to get anything if we didn't get 3. We tried to pare it down to 2. No, we'd have had to resubmit the entire grant. It could have taken years. So now we have 3 crosswalks on 14 Mile Road. I don't know if they generate the kind of traffic that the state thinks they do, but right now, I think what we have is fine, and I really wouldn't like to see any more put up anytime soon unless it requires it, according to traffic.
Thank you. Ms. Milan.
I actually don't even like them. I'll just be honest. I find them hard to get through. I've watched kids in the morning try and run from school. I think they do more stupid things with the crosswalks there than they did before. If you're riding a bike, you can barely get your bike into the cross with the way it jags and everything. I just think they're kind of dangerous. I don't know, they probably saved some stress, I don't know, but I wouldn't ask for any more. And they don't have good traffic flow for cars. If you're coming out by the gas station over here, the way the one stops right there, people will still try and go in when they're not even supposed to go in there. These drivers make up their own rules, which makes it less safe, and the whole idea of them is to make safety. So I just find them to be a little confusing, and no, please, no more.
Thank you, Ms. Moffett.
So it's funny, in doing the research for tonight, I watched some of the past year's League of Women Voters videos, and they talked about the crosswalks a lot 2 years ago. And one of the people that was running said, people will get used to them. They won't talk about them anymore. You know, in a couple years, everyone will be over it. Well, apparently that's not the case. I don't think that they're beneficial. I get what Jim's saying about by the seniors high rise, and it's probably good to have them there. But yeah, I'm with everyone else. We've got enough. We don't need any more. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Ball.
I don't think we need any more for the amount of pedestrians that we have that visit our downtown. However, one of the things I would love to see is a downtown that is more pedestrian friendly and more pedestrian full. I would, for example, love to see a grocery store come into the downtown and other retail where Clawson could be the unique kind of city that you could live in with maybe not owning 2 cars or 3 cars, but you could walk and meet all of your family household needs. I don't think we need more crosswalks. I do like the idea, though, of perhaps beautifying them in a way that makes them more conspicuous and therefore safe for both the pedestrians and the drivers that cross them.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Mr. Horton. And this is, I've got 3 questions, so I'm going to try to paraphrase to get it all in one. It's all the same thing, but they're written.
I love a challenge.
How would you maintain the budget without raising taxes? And the other one says, maintain the current status, and if so, any changes, what would you make?
All right, so
And
as you paraphrase...
I will give you a minute and a half.
As you paraphrase the question, I'll have to paraphrase my answer. As you know, the city, when we went through the economic downturn 9-10 years ago, we pared the budget and the employee groups down to, that's why City Hall's not open on Friday. The DPW workers work Monday through Thursday. They agreed to, rather than a 10% pay cut, they agreed to a 10% cut in hours, which made it 36 hours, so they work 4 days, 9 hours. Right now, the city has been able to balance its budget. We do have several debt items that are going to be rolling off, bond issues for 12-town drains and North Arm and some of the other infrastructure improvements that were made to the south of us in Royal Oak, which was really to support, well, I won't go there, which really didn't benefit Clawson that much. But we paid millions towards that. And that's cost us a lot. Now, some of those items will roll off in 2021, 2022, and it's certainly going to help us a great deal. But I wouldn't be in favor of eliminating any of the city services whatsoever. I think if it's going to be done, it would have to be done through attrition, and we'd have to allow our managers of each of the departments to determine how that would be done, and that's their responsibility anyhow. But I think we keep our DPW, we keep our police, we keep our fire, we keep our museum, we keep our library, and I think we can do it. It's going to be tight, but we can do it.
Thank you. Ms. Milan.
I think you do it the same way you do it in your household. You make a budget and you figure out what the necessities are and you go towards those. You make necessary purchases only. If you can get something that's used for maybe a little less than something that's brand new and shiny, you may have to go that route. I think you competitively bid anything that you are purchasing. I think we manage manpower hours. That's always a great way to cut. And I think the city's doing a great job at attempting to do this. I think the sidewalk issue right now is a perfect example of trying to accomplish something that needs to be done without making an undue expense on top of the the residents that are here right now on our tax base. So I would continue to follow those type of things and not eliminate anything unless it's something that's obsolete. But there's always something that can go. I guess if you want to take a fine-tooth comb through what we're paying for now and take personalities outside of it and maybe not think, oh, I'm going to make so-and-so lose their job because of it. If it's better for the city to make a cut, you need to make a cut.
Thank you, Ms. Moffett.
So a couple things. Obviously, I agree with Paula in that, taking a look and making sure that we're using the funds that we have in the most prudent manner, making decisions and using funds that benefit a broad breadth of our citizens and make the greatest impact. But it's also important to understand, what kind of money we're going to have to work with in the short term and the long term. Like I said, our hands are tied by a large extent by the Headley Act and the increments in which we can expect our budgets to go up over the next couple of years, even as our housing prices continue to rise and value continue to rise as they have in recent years. I think that looking for other sources of funds to take care of some of the issues that we need to take care of is really important, because we are limited by the pot of money that we have, just like everyone's house is. And you can cut and you can plan and you can make sure that you're being prudent with it, but you can only deal with the pot of money that you have. So looking for other sources of funds, other ways to take care of some of the things that we want to help keep our city running, help keep our city, as great as it has been, are the things that we need to take a look at and address.
Thank you, Mr. Ball.
I think if you want to maintain the status quo and improve, you have to be voting for leaders that have a strategy for growing property value. And I'm not sure we have that in every arm of our government, because it is a sure thing that the city services we pay $1 for today will certainly cost $1.50 or $2 tomorrow. And if you haven't governed yourself in a way that helps to grow property value, then you're not getting those increased revenue streams into the city to at least maintain the status quo. And I think a better case scenario would be to aim for greater prosperity. I have laid out a strategy for property value growth because I think what I'm saying gets at the reasons why people move into a community. And when you have more people moving into a community, it affects the property value desirability, prices go up, and the city becomes wealthier. To me, it's a simple equation. You have to have a strategy for growth. And that means more than just pretty sidewalks and pretty roads.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd.
Well, I definitely support a balanced budget, and I definitely think that we can do that without raising taxes. Although I do believe the sidewalk on the ballot is very important. In terms of balancing the budget, I think working with the city manager and the individual departments is very important. And as we discussed before, sharing services that with neighboring cities would be important as well. Ones that make sense to the city. Another thing I think the city's done really well is maintaining the building's hours, the city hall and everything when it's necessary for them to be open. That's saved them a lot of money, and also managing employee hours as well. So I think that working with the city manager and departments would be very important to do, and sharing services as well.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Milan. And this is also a two-part question, but the first part should be a very easy answer. What is your opinion, and do you support the sidewalk millage program? And the second part is, does Clawson have enough parking in the downtown area?
I do support the sidewalk program. As I just said, I really like the way that it was structured so that it's not an undue hardship for anyone. That's kind of tied it in with things that are falling off. So from a financial standpoint, it's not really burdensome. The second part was, sorry, I'm really sorry. Parking. Okay, parking is always interesting to talk about here. They will say, based on the studies, there is plenty of parking in the downtown area. There are probably adequate spaces for people to park in if you're hitting a restaurant or a bar or one of the cute little stores downtown. However, if you are one of those people, which is like most of us, who thinks if you're not parked outside of the destination that you are going to, there is not enough parking, you'll probably think there's not enough parking. But there is hidden parking throughout the city, and it supposedly, according to the studies they've conducted, is adequate for what is there today. Would there possibly be a better design? Of course.
Thank you, Ms. Moffett.
So in regard to the sidewalk millage, I wholeheartedly support it. You know, there was a plan to take care of the sidewalks with an additional $25 fee that was added to people's taxes, and we found out that that wasn't sufficient to get the sidewalks project completed in a timely manner. So with the new millage, it'll only increase everyone about $7 a year, but we'll be able to complete the sidewalk project in 11 years or in 5 years and pay for it over a course of 11 years, get to where we need to be. So I think it was very prudent to go ahead and put that on the millage to expedite getting that project completed. In regard to parking downtown, you know, I haven't had a problem parking, and I go downtown frequently, and, you know, I'm not into walking when I don't have to. So, but, you know, as the city becomes more popular, it might be something that we need to address and do some studies and find out, you know, what kind of expansion or things that we need to do to change to meet the needs as they increase.
Thank you. Mr. Ball.
I'm not going to vote for the sidewalk proposal because I don't think it's the kind of infrastructure idea that brands us in a unique way. I don't think it makes us a destination attraction. I don't think it does that which is most important. It doesn't spur property value growth and greater interest in the city. As far as parking is concerned, I think there's enough parking downtown. Let me just say one thing I would never like to see in Clawson, which I feel like has ruined some of our neighboring communities. I would never like to see parking meters ever in the city of Clawson. But I think there's sufficient parking for the businesses that we have currently there.
Thank you. Mr. Byrd.
Well, I absolutely support the sidewalk program, and I think it's great that it'll be completed in 5 years. You know, I think it's very important for the character of the city and also in terms of safety, so people aren't, you know, tripping over, you know, sidewalks that are, you know, being pushed up through tree roots and things like that, which, you know, it's important for the safety of the citizens and also for the city itself. In terms of parking in downtown, I mean, I've never had an issue finding a spot. I go downtown a lot with my friends, and so I think personally, like, as of right now, I don't think it's an issue, but I definitely think that in the future it very well could be. You know, if more businesses move into downtown, then obviously more people will be frequenting the restaurants, et cetera. So I definitely think like a study in the future would definitely be an agenda item for the city council.
Thank you. Mr. Horton.
Sidewalk millage. As most of you know that have lived here for many years, the city began a $25 a year stipend to come to the city, which created a pool of money to use to repair sidewalks. Initially, it was going to be done over a 7-8 year period, only to realize that the cost of cement almost doubled, and the amount of labor taken to remove tree roots and everything else, and not just laying cement. So it became almost a 14-year project, and we're only about a third of the way through the city. So we tasked the city manager with coming up with a plan to get it done sooner, and understanding that we do have a bond, which the city manager just went out and rebid and saved the city about $300,000. We're hoping to pay for a lot of that, which should not increase anyone's taxes by any more than a few dollars a year. Parking, I think we have enough parking now. If you're willing to walk a couple blocks, I think anybody that go to Birmingham and go to a movie is willing to walk 2-3 blocks. There's no reason they can't here. I mean, we do have on-street parking, and that's a beauty.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Moffett. What kind of activities would you offer for teens? Do you think the school and the city should work together?
Wow. Teens are hard anyhow, so it's difficult to get them engaged in a lot of things. I know my youngest son graduated from Clawson High School, and he always, being involved in sports, there was lots of things for them to do. I know that there's some drama programs that are being started in the city and some other activities for them to be involved in. I think it's a fine line. You know, the schools are there. They're the ones that are intimately involved with the students. And I think it's kind of a school board and a school issue to keep them engaged. The city certainly can support through volunteers or whatever, you know, the spaces that we have available, that sort of thing. But I think that that's not necessarily something under the city's purview.
Thank you. Mr. Ball.
I think as far as entertaining teens, I would certainly like to consult the people that teach teens. So I like the idea of perhaps some solutions that were offered to be a joint enterprise of the school board as well as the city council. I'm a father of a 6-year-old, so I'm not quite there in terms of teen, but I can remember myself. I always found it, I played varsity soccer, and I did piano, and that seemed to keep me out of trouble. So I think sports, recreation, and cultural events, happenings are the types of things that can keep teens occupied and out of doing some things that they ought not be doing.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd.
Yeah, well, I definitely think that events for teens would be great for the city, obviously, as we have a lot of families here in Clawson. And I think that having events at the city parks would be great. But I also think that it's definitely a school board issue more so than one for the city council. But I think that the city council could play an important role in setting up different events for teenagers. And I know, like, right now we have like a skate park that's by the city park. I think that's great for teenagers to use. And, you know, there's a lot of room for people to play sports and recreational events in the city parks. So,
Thank you, Mr. Horton.
Kathy Leanhouse, who works with the city, has done a marvelous job with the parks and has actually was pushed for a lot of the improvements of the park. For those who don't know, Clawson's not unique in that being a small community, the schools in the city we try to operate together and help each other out. In that we just invested almost $400,000 a few years ago on a AstroTurf football field for our schools and for our city leagues. We have had programs over in the community center for kids to go to after school, but they were eliminated because they weren't attended. We were paying money to keep employees there and to keep the gym open and have events for the kids, but nobody came. A lot of them chose to go to the library, and it became problemsome. So I think we do a lot for our teens, but we do need to keep up with the schools and try to help each other and certainly have events and things for them to do. I mean, if we can keep them from off the streets, it's great.
Thank you, Ms. Milan.
I think that just encouraging a very family-friendly community is the best thing we could do for these kids. It's not our responsibility to entertain them or educate them as the city. Providing them safe places is what we want to do. So we do that by maintaining a good presence in our neighborhoods. We do that by creating a sense of community, which we do through all the sporting events that are out there. If you have kids, you can have them in football, baseball, soccer, basketball, inside the schools and outside of the schools. And I know, honestly, that's one of the things that drew us into this community was we met the people, and the people here take care of each other. Like one of my neighbors said when we moved in, she's an elderly woman, she said, you watch out for us and we're going to watch out for you. Day one on the block, I didn't really think it was a friendly statement, but I've since grown to know her, and I know she means it, and it's good. But that's the same approach we have to take with our kids, just being there for them and watching out for them one after another, and engaging in all of the resources that are there through the schools and through the Rotary Club and all the things that the adult clubs, if they could incorporate them in a little at a time with opportunities that are there, then that will help mold our kids.
Thank you, and this will be the last question prior to the closing remarks. And I have 3 questions asking the same thing, but they're written different. So I will read all 3 of them. They are indicating that they would like information from all of you people. What have you done in Clawson to earn our trust and vote? What civics groups and business groups have you participated in? What benefit is your professional background or experience? And we will start with Mr. Ball.
Okay, let me address the last one first. I have been a professional performing artist for the last 16 years, which has put me in the field, performing at exactly the kinds of events, happenings, and recreational spaces that other cities are using as devices to attract new populations to their city centers, to give them that, to have them walk away with a great word-of-mouth review, which they know will spur property value growth and revenue streams ultimately to that city. And I have been everywhere. In the last week, I've been across 4 states, and I've been into Canada and upstate New York and everywhere. And I've talked to these city officials. I've asked them questions, you know, how did you build this? And sometimes it was free. But they're all doing these cultural events, and they're building these great recreational spaces to make their cities more attractive. And they're inviting people who do what I do, music performance, to help facilitate that property growth and that great word-of-mouth review.
Thank you. Mr. Byrd.
Yes, well, I'll start with, in terms of professional background, I'm an attorney for about 3.5 years, and I've practiced in the areas of criminal law, property law, and I'm currently practicing business litigation. So I do have a pretty good background in terms of the issues that the city be facing. In terms of what have I done in the community, I'm a member of Genesis, which is a church. It's outside of Clawson, but it's in Royal Oak. But they do a lot of activities throughout the many cities in the area, you know, Troy, Clawson, Royal Oak, Ferndale. They have a homeless warming shelter during the winter to help people, our homeless population, have a place to stay. And they currently helped set up the AIDS walk that was about 2 weeks ago. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Horton.
What have I done to earn your trust? Well, if I've given you an answer that you didn't like, hopefully I got your trust, because I'm never going to tell you something just to make you happy. I'm going to tell you the way it is. I'm going to make decisions that are based on the entire community and not just for one person. Community groups, if I'd have known we were going to have this question, I would have saved some of my opening remarks. Fire Department, 28 years. Goodfellows, 28 years. President for 24 of those years. Worked with so many families and a lot of the students and kids in this community, making sure they had food and shelter and toys and what have you. What makes my skills important? My full-time job was, I worked for the post office. I ended up as a postmaster. I had a multi-million-dollar budget, and the post office is very similar to the city in that we don't actually sell a product, but we have a budget, and we have to work within a budget. Employees take up 85% of the budget, and the rest of it is what we can do to pay for our bills and so on and so forth. So I've worked with 7, 8 different unions. I'm very uniquely qualified in this position.
Thank you. Ms. Milan.
I have had the pleasure, since I've lived here almost 5 years, of serving almost 4 of those on the Planning Commission, which was great. I learned a lot about the businesses here. I learned a lot about the people here who are interested in our businesses and interested in maintaining their communities. My experience is, as I said before, I have a bachelor's degree in political science and master's degree in public administration. I have studied labor relations. I've worked labor relations. I've worked human resources. I know studied downtown redevelopment. I've studied historical designations. I love municipalities. I just love the excitement that comes with serving the end user, which is us, the homeowners, the residents. I would like to use these skills in my education to help benefit all of us. My experience and professional. I work for an engineering firm. There, I manage licensing. I deal with the many municipalities, state, federal, and local, to ensure that regulations are met and standards are kept on buildings and on our new developments. And all of those things would tie into what the city council would be responsible for. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moffitt.
So professionally, I have also a degree in human resources from Wayne State University. But as I began my career, I became passionate about benefits. And I learned everything I could and took my career on a benefits trajectory to the extent that I've become one of the industry experts in the area. I was director of benefits administration for a large company for several years, and now I'm on their product team. So we're doing strategic planning, and we're doing project management to help build our product. the thing is when I become interested in something, I dive in. Like I said, I've done a lot of research on the city to figure out how it works and get the facts and figures and make sure that I understand what's going on. When my kids were little, I was involved in all of the scouts, the athletic board, and that sort of thing, becoming someone who wants to contribute to the organization and make sure it keeps on track. But the most important thing that I want to say is that I have a passion for our city. We have a great city. We don't need to be anyone else. We need to be us and continue on the path of growth and development and awesomeness that we've had over the past several years.
Thank you. That ends the questions, and now we will do the closing remarks in reverse order, and we will start with Ms. Moffett.
So I again would like to thank our host and especially the citizens who came out today. Local elections are important, and they are what shapes and guides the city we live in. And Clawson is a wonderful city, and it takes work and dedication to keep it that way. It is important that council members make educated and informed decisions about the matters facing our city. Having held a variety of leadership and strategic planning roles, I have the skills and experience to successfully carry out that task. Some crucial items facing the city that we need to plot a course for are that we need to look for additional revenue forms, such as grants for infrastructure concerns, such as street repairs. And we need to embrace forward-thinking ideas, such as food truck ordinances that keep us in competition with changing times. We need to be nimble and open-minded as solutions are researched and decided on. I have the necessary skills and experience and passion to make a positive contribution to our city. I'm asking for your vote on November 7th for City Council because I want to help keep Clawson awesome.
Thank you. Ms. Milan.
Again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm not the most eloquent speaker, but I hope you could bear with me on all of this. I would be really proud to represent Clawson. I just enjoy the community. I enjoy the people who serve. I have a personality that is someone that works with people, not against. I do not have my own issues or my own agenda. My agenda would be to represent each one of us to the best, to make this community the best that it can be for us, not for the downtown, not for the business owners, but for the residents first, and then to incorporate what we want and how we want to develop our city into benefiting them as well. I would like to maintain our city services. I would like to prioritize our neighborhoods. I would like to work with the various organizations to create an identity for Clawson that will allow us to grow from the inside out and not from the outside in. And I would encourage any kind of comments anyone may have that could help encourage me in this endeavor that I have. And I'm always open to comments and opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Horton.
First, thank you, everyone who's here and those who may be watching. Thank you to the hosts, Jerry, and all of those at the Women's League of Women's Voters. We appreciate you being here and setting this up so that we can speak our turn. Thank you to those that are up here on the dais to speak and that have taken the opportunity to run. I've been on City Council for the last 4 years. I would like your vote to run, and I would like to remain on City Council for the next 4 years. I think that we still have some things that need to be done, and I would like to be a part of that. Again, a lot of the economic growth that we speak of, a lot of people don't realize that despite leading the county the past couple of years in economic growth and or home value, Headley and Prop A has limited our budget increases to less than 1% because of the cuts in state shared revenue. So I think because of my unique experience with operating in multi-million-dollar budgets, I think that I'm very uniquely suited to be here, and I would appreciate your vote, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Byrd.
Well, while I've not lived in Clawson a great long time, I've only been here for 2 years. Certainly it's not indicative of my love for the city. I love this city so much. You know, I plan on being here for a long, long time, and I do want to do everything I can to help this city grow and prosper. You know, I do think that as an attorney, I do have the right qualifications for this job. You know, first and foremost, our job is to, write the ordinances for the city and make sure the city is running smoothly. But ultimately, I think we're all in this together, and I definitely want to do everything I can to continue to make Clawson great and allow it to grow. And so I certainly hope to have your vote come November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ball.
So I think city council is a public trust, not just to respond and reflect the will of the residents, but also to guide the city into a more prosperous tomorrow. And that takes ideas and a strategy, which I have. I want to see Clawson enjoy the same kind of prosperity and property value growth that I've watched happen in the last 10 years in Ferndale, Berkeley, and Royal Oak. I don't want to be like them. I want to be better than them. But we cannot get there by voting for the status quo, because if we're not moving forward, we are falling behind. I want to be the kind of new leadership that embraces new ideas, that's open to new thought, and that understands and recognizes the need for cultivating a brand identity that will spur property value growth and give us the better tomorrow that we all deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. That ends the responses and the questions from the audience to the candidates. We would like to thank the audience, the candidates, and Clawson Municipal TV, Dave Willett, and production assistant Lori Carrier, for making this forum possible. For further information on the candidates, check the League of Women Voters website, LWVOA.org, and click on voter guides. When rebroadcast times of this forum are known, they will be posted on the City of Clawson website, www.cityofclawson.com. This program may be seen on WOW Channel 10, Comcast 17, and 914. The League of Women Voters is funded by contributions from concerned citizens and businesses. It's open to membership, men and women over the age of 16. Remember to vote November 7, 2017. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you and good night.